some live footage of Chief Constable Serena Kennedy speaking to reporters. Let's take a listen.
At the level of violence that was shown towards my officers. This is the same officers who've been supporting this community for the last 48 hours. Some of the first responders who attended that awful scene on Monday and then were faced with that level of violence. This is not Southport. This is not the communities of Merseyside. This is a close-knit, family-type community who were there at the vigil to share fellowship, show their respect, grieve, speak to each other about those terrible events and just show the families of those little girls how much this has impacted on them. And yet that turned to a night of violence, and I'm just disgusted and appalled.
What do you think the motive was of those troublemakers last night?
They were there purely for hooliganism and thuggery in terms of bringing that level of violence and that behaviour onto the streets of Southport, and that's not what this community is about. We saw the very best of that community last night at the vigil. We've seen the very best of this community this morning when they've all been pulling together to support each other, to put right the damage that has been done. That is not what this community is about.
You said they will feel the full force of the law. Have you arrested any of those rioters?
A number of arrests were made last night, but the investigation has already started into those offenders who were responsible. They absolutely will feel the full force of the law. I've got a full investigation team on this now, and we will continue until we have identified as many of those offenders as possible, and they will feel the full force of the law. And just to reassure the communities of Southport, who I am sure are really worried about, are we going to see this again tonight? What's going to happen? The communities of Merseyside, in terms of the intelligence out there, we are absolutely planning for this evening and for the weekend ahead. We are being really well supported from police forces across the northwest to make sure we have got sufficient resources so that we don't see a repeat of last night.
Do you think you were caught unawares last night? A lot of your officers were injured.
No, we absolutely were not caught unawares last night. We were aware this was not a planned protest. We are good at facilitating peaceful protest. We work with the organisers, and irrespective of views, our role is to facilitate peaceful protest. These people did not engage with us to try and allow and facilitate this peaceful protest. It was mindless hooliganism. We were well prepared. We had sufficient resources. However, the people who turned up last night were bolstered very quickly, and it very quickly escalated, and we did have to call for mutual aid. And as you say, 54 police officers received injuries last night, 49 of them from Merseyside Police, and 4 who travelled in from Lancashire to support my officers. Being at Southport Police Station last night and seeing the officers being brought in from the street with their injuries was just devastating. I have to say my colleagues in North West Ambulance Service, in terms of the triage that they put in place and the treatment that they showed to my staff last night, was outstanding. But it's not a good place to be when your officers are coming in with the injuries they had.
How's the investigation into the stabbings?
The investigation is progressing well. It's obviously a unique and unusual and devastating set of circumstances, but it's a fast-moving investigation and it's progressing well.
Just back to what happened on Monday, can you just talk us through the support still being given to those families who are impacted by that, and also the residents of Hart Street who obviously heard the fallout from that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you identify really well there what we are dealing with. So we have got dedicated family liaison officers for the families who've tragically lost their little girls. We've got dedicated family liaison officers for all of the little girls' families who are in hospital receiving treatment. We've got family liaison officers who are working with those little girls who were at that event but fortunately weren't injured, so support for them. And then recognising that the immediate community heard and witnessed things that nobody should ever see. So we are working with our partners in Sefton Council, working with making sure that they have got that trauma support that they need. But then also recognising that actually, because this is such a tight-knit, family-style community, the trauma is being felt right across Southport. So it's fantastic we're working with the third sector to make sure there's drop-in centres so people can just go and access people like Samaritans and another third sector, the victim care hub through the Office of Police and Crime Commissioner, just to get that help and support, just to say how they are feeling immediately. And actually this is going to be felt in this communities for days, weeks, months and years, and we are working with Sefton Council to make sure we are planning for that.
You've obviously...
girls in hospital.
So all I can say is, in terms of the little girls that are in hospital, none of them have been released yet. They are still receiving treatment.
And your officers, how is the condition of the officers?
So the officers, whilst we've got broken bones, we've got cuts, we've got concussion, which I think is serious enough. I've got none of my officers who would be defined as critical, but they are receiving care, medical treatment and psychological support.
You've hinted there towards the fact that there potentially is rumblings of other things going to be happening over the days to come. Have you got any plans to call in the military to support you on that?
That's absolutely not where we need to be. Yes, there is intelligence around other events taking place potentially this evening and also into the weekend, which we are planning for. I am absolutely confident that we have got sufficient resources here in Merseyside, being supported by colleagues from the North West, both for tonight and into the weekend.
Chief, sorry, just for eyeline about where these attackers coming from?
Sorry?
Do you have any information about the place where these far-right attackers coming from?
No, I don't have any information about that to share with you, sorry.
Chief, sorry, just for eyeline, can we just get your immediate reaction to what happened last night?
You know, I'm absolutely horrified and disgusted by the level of violence that we saw here on the streets of Southport last night. The level of violence, hooliganism, thuggery that was absolutely directed towards my police officers is disgusting. Those officers have been supporting this community for the last 48 hours who are absolutely traumatised, and that should have been what they should have been doing last night. They should have been continuing to provide that community reassurance, which we saw them doing so well in the aftermath of Monday and all day yesterday and at the vigil. People should have gone home from the vigil last night feeling that they'd managed to pay their respect to those little girls who've lost their lives, but also remembering those who are still receiving treatment. And instead, those officers have had to kit up and deal with that level of violence.
And do you mind just recapping the injuries in total and how many arrests of your officers?
So there's 54 officers have received injuries. 49 of them are from Merseyside Police. Four of them are for Lancashire Police. We were really well supported by our colleagues from the North West Ambulance Service, but actually from hospitals right across the North West in terms of providing support and treatment to those officers. And I'd just like to pass on my thanks to my colleagues for that. They are now being supported by our Police Federation, but also making sure that they're getting the right psychological support, because we need them to be back in work so they can carry on supporting the communities of Merseyside, but only when they are well enough, and this will have had a significant impact on their well-being.